Janesville. Welcome to Park Place Views, brought to you by the City of Janesville and JATV Media Services. I'm your host, Molly Nolte, and I'm the Management Information Specialist in the City Manager's Office. This monthly program aims to keep Janesville residents informed by highlighting the people, places, events, and partners in the City of Janesville. If you're interested in viewing past episodes of Park Place Views, they're available to watch on the city's website or JATV's YouTube channel. On this month's episode, I'll be speaking with City Manager Marc Freitag to get an insider perspective as Marc finishes up his 6th year as the City Manager of Janesville, as he's been in this position since December of 2013. Thank you for joining me here today, Marc.
Thanks, Molly. It's great to be here.
Great to be back in the studio with you. It's been an entire year since we've talked, so 6 years in Janesville. I know this is kind of a big question, but what can you say that you've learned in your time here so far?
Yeah, well, I think, as I've shared with many people, Janesville certainly is a wonderful community. It's a special place to live, work, and play. It's got, great people. It's got great outdoor recreational opportunities. We have that Midwest value system and, frankly, that good Midwest work ethic. My family and I moved all around the country during my time in the military, and so now we've been able to put some roots in, and we just really, really enjoy the quality of life that we enjoy in Janesville.
Absolutely, I would agree with that. So let's go ahead and get down to business. So as many people know, the City of Janesville uses a comprehensive planning tool, and we call it the 5-year plan. So as we end the year 2019, let's talk a little bit more about that. So you helped initiate the city's first strategic plan, the 5-year plan, in 2014. So please explain to us why having a strategic plan is so important.
Yeah, so prior to 2014, the city had not ever put its arms around a strategic plan. And it's one of the first things that the council asked me to do as I became the new city manager. And I think what the strategic plan does for the community is that it helps to provide some focus to what we do. It certainly helps us to prioritize and allocate scarce resources. In that regard, I mean, people, time, and money. Frankly, we treat it as a framework. It's not set in stone, and as you well know, things in a municipal environment change often, and there are things that happen that we may not have put into the plan. And so we may not be able to accomplish all the things that we set out on the strategic plan to do, but it does give us that framework. It gives us a guide. We've organized it with our 9 goals that the city has. And so, it gives us that ability to kind of provide a pathway forward. And I think it's proven to be, quite successful as we look at where Janesville was in December of 2013 and where we are now in December of 2019. I think the other thing that is integral about a strategic plan is that, it provides, not only the city staff the ability to kind of provide a plan forward, it provides the council the ability to, make sure we're staying on track. But it's also a great transparency tool for the public, and the public knows what we're planning on doing. So they can look at that strategic plan and say, this is what we're doing in 2019, this is what we're doing in 20, and frankly, this is what we're doing in 2024. And so, it's very, very important. I would tell you that we have been successful because, the national economy is certainly strong, and as a result, the state and local economies are strong. I would tell you that, the city's doing well because of that strategic plan for the reasons that I've already discussed. And then I think the other thing that helps us right now is that the community's buying in. Back to that transparency, piece. They are able to see it. They're able to, look deep, if you will, look down 5 years. And, frankly, if they have questions as, hey, how come you didn't get to this particular project, we're able to explain that. But it also holds us accountable. And so, with that community buy-in, I think it really sets us on a nice path. And that's what we're seeing, great economic growth in the community, equalized assessed values grown, over $1 billion in the past 4 or 5 years. And so it's a good place to be.
Absolutely. So kind of in terms of talking about the community, I think more and more often we're hearing people who might be coming back to the Janesville community after a few years of being gone and maybe taking a drive around town or maybe walking downtown and seeing that there's been a lot of changes and a lot of progress, especially in the last 5 years or so. So for those 2019 strategic projects, what can you say is currently underway in the city, or what will we have accomplished by the end of the year?
Yeah, so I can hit a brief list. The strategic plan has hundreds of tasks on it over the 5 years. Some of them are recurring each and every year, but in 2019, some of the things that we've done, and I think the number one thing that the community talked about in 2014 when we went out and we solicited, what do you want us to do? What are your priorities as a community? The community came back and said, we want our roads fixed. And so, in 2016, we implemented a new program where we've doubled the road program. In 2013, we were doing, 6 miles of roads per year. The city has over 333 miles of roads that we're responsible for. And so if you're not doing about 12 of those per year, you're missing out, not keeping up with that life cycle of a road. And so in 2019, we were able to do 12.5 miles of road in the year. So that's a good news story. The other thing, kind of in that road perspective, is we were able to urbanize Ruger Avenue between Wright Road and US 14, and that was a former county road that got brought into the city. But when it got brought into the city, it never got updated, and so we received some state DOT funding. The county had some funding that they put towards it. The city certainly did, and so three partners there, if you will, resurfaced and urbanized that corridor, and it's just night and day when you drive that new road. But curb, gutter, stormwater, sidewalks, street lights, nice road surface. It's beautiful, and so that's a significant improvement for the community. One thing that I know that you're working on is we've established a city intranet, and I know that's still a work in progress, but by the end of the year, we expect to roll that out. One thing that I think has been really something we've been working hard on over the last 5 years is updating our bus fleet. So as you know, the city operates 17 buses, and all 17 of our buses are beyond their lifespan, which is average 12 years. So ours are all over 12 years old, and driving miles on the buses is capped out at 500,000 miles per bus, and we're well beyond that for all 17 buses. And so working with state and federal grants and then some local match dollars, we've been able to purchase 6 new buses. They arrived here in October, and so those have been placed into operation. The best news is in 2020, we have 9 more buses due in, I think it's April-May time period. And so, by next June, we will have 15 of 17 buses that are brand new to the city operating in our JTS system. And so, great news for the community, and we're working hard on those final 2. I would tell you that something that's near and dear to a lot of folks who have family members buried out at Oak Hill Cemetery is the roads, the interconnecting roads that run through the cemetery. And this year we started a program where every year we will, work on a certain mileage, if you will, of roads or portion of a mileage. So we started that this year, and we'll just keep nugging away at it each year. And so that's a great news story, because that's one of those things, if you've ever driven out in Oak Hill Cemetery, roads aren't in very good condition. And so we can do better, and we're working on it. For those of us that work in City Hall, or if you work in the downtown, you know that the City Hall front plaza is being redone. It was essentially leaking through to the 2 garages below that are underground, and frankly, because of the salt and all of that, it had actually eaten away at some of the concrete below ground, and we had big holes in the floor of the upper level garage and the ceiling of the bottom level garage. So structurally unsound. So that needed to be fixed, and frankly, we thought we were going to be done here, by the end of the year, but Mother Nature has kind of kicked in, and I think it's going to be springtime before that project's finished. But that's been a significant improvement. One of the things that we're doing in our police department is replacing their body-worn cameras. And so if you have an officer that's, in the field, in any capacity, they wear a body camera, and that's for their own protection, and it's certainly for the public's protection. And so it's just, it's kind of become the norm for our JPD, and we're glad to update those. They've been wearing them for several years now, and it's just that time to replace those. One thing that we have done is replaced an ambulance for our Janesville Fire Department, and we have a program in place where ambulance lasts for 7 years, and then we replace it. And so we just have a replacement cycle like that. Likewise with our engines, every 12 years we replace our fire engines. And then, one thing that I think is a nice addition to our community is we've built and named Anglers Park, which is really from the Monterey Rock downstream on the river where the Monterey Dam used to be. We removed that dam last year. We've done the restoration of the riverbank, and we've now named that Anglers Park. So, great fishing location, lots of good memories there, and a nice asset now, a new asset for the community. So it's been a good 2019, no doubt.
Excuse me. So we just covered some really important progress that happened in 2019. So let's look forward a little bit. What can folks expect in 2020? And do you think the city will be slowing down on their projects?
Yeah, not at all. We just don't operate like that. There's too many things that need to be worked on. The community certainly not only expects, but they demand that, we produce results and we produce, good opportunities and infrastructure and services and programs for, our residents and our citizens. So, we're going to stay very, very busy. So 2020 is not going to be any easier than 2019 was. But I would tell you that we're going to focus again on resurfacing at least 12 miles of roadway across our city road network. We are going to take a look at how do we pay for that. Costs continue to move out faster, than frankly, inflation or our ability to keep up with borrowing. And so one of the things we'll be taking a look at the direction of the council is establishing a transportation utility. And what that's going to look like, we don't know yet, but there are some other communities in Wisconsin that have done that, and there are other communities across the state, similar to the water utility, the wastewater utility, the stormwater utility, the sanitation fund, but looking at how we collect fees and apply it towards that road program, as opposed to always borrowing, and then not only borrowing and paying that off over 10 years, but you're paying that interest over those 10 years too. And so it may be a better way to manage financially our road program. And so we're going to work on that. I would tell you that something that you're involved in again is the redesign of our city and economic development websites. That's something that we're in the practice of doing about every 5 years. And so it was 2016 we did it last, or so, 15. And so we got to redo that. Something else that I'm sure you'll be involved in, you may not know that yet, is our citizen satisfaction survey is reaching out to the community and saying, hey, what's going well, what's not going well, what do they want us to work on? And so we're going to do that. That money's already allocated into the council's budget, and so we'll tap into that to do a citywide satisfaction survey. One of the things we're doing on our JTS buses, and we'll do in 2020, is specifically take a look at ensuring that we have GPS technology applied to those buses, because the technology is out there right now where on your smartphone you can pull up your smartphone and you can look at our routes, and what our designated routes are and when the bus should be there. Once we get GPS technology on all of our buses, you'll be able to pull up your smartphone, look at the route, and you can see where the bus is on the route and an estimated time until the bus gets to your stop. And so again, another improvement to the services that we provide to the community. One thing that we became aware of maybe 2 years ago, I guess it was 2 years ago, we had an individual that was in some kind of ADA accessible vehicle, and they kind of drove around the city and they said, hey, some of your signage is not at the right height, things aren't marked properly, you guys need to get these things fixed. And so we said, hey, thanks for that, we'll get on it. And so this past year we kind of did a kind of an inventory of what we've got out there from things that aren't ADA accessible, haven't been brought up to what our current standards are. And the law says that as you do those kinds of improvements, you have to do it. But frankly, if we can work on some critical areas, we're going to do that. And so we're going to look at across the city, where are those areas where ADA requirements are not up to par, and let's prioritize how we get after fixing those across the city rather than waiting for 25 years before you fix something, right? So if we can do that, we're going to do that, but we're going to spend some time doing that. Something near and dear to our Janesville Police Department is updating their shooting range. They have an indoor shooting range, and frankly, it's become problematic. And I would say it's that it's not unsafe, but I'm concerned that if we don't do something now, it will become unsafe. So we need to put some money into that to get that fixed, so that they can practice shooting, which is important in their line of work. And then I would tell you, for our firefighters, also something near and dear to your heart, is this idea of buying a second set of turnout gear for all of our firefighters. And so, that's a big expense across, 97 people in our fire department. But one of the things that Chief Rhodes and previously Chief Banker have brought to my attention is the concerns about cancer and firefighters getting cancer, in their older years as a result of fires that they've had to put out. And what the research says that, you're exposed to those carcinogens on your turnout gear. And so if you get your turnout gear cleaned, that may not be such a problem in the future. But, if you turn it in to get cleaned, guess what? Now you don't have something, right? And so you need that swap out or that second set. And so we're going to make sure we make the investment, get that done to protect our firefighters. And so that's another right thing to do. I would tell you that kind of in the line of police and fire again, our emergency operations, we run an emergency operations center as a city, or we're prepared to, in case of a natural or a man-made disaster. But one thing the city doesn't have that we are supposed to have is an emergency operations plan. So we've put some money aside to have a consultant help us work through that, because that's something that, frankly, if there ever is a disaster, the first thing they're going to ask for is, where's your plan and did you follow it? And right now, we don't have the plan. And so we're kind of shooting from the hip. Now, can we respond and do the things we need to do? Very confident we can. But I think this is one of those things that it always helps to have that plan to work off of. And so we're going to do that. And then I guess kind of the last thing that I would point out is the city tracks intersections across the community that, frankly, have a higher accident rate than other intersections. And so we were able to apply for some grant funding from the state DOT earlier this year, and we got awarded some grant dollars to do some improvements on the intersection at Racine and Randall. And so, curb bump outs, traffic lights, the layout and kind of the flow, but we'll bring somebody in to kind of help us work through that. And I think that's just one of those critical nodes that seems like there's always accidents there. And so are there things that we can do to make sure that intersection is a more safe intersection for the community? And so that's just the tip of the iceberg. Obviously, lots of things.
Big iceberg.
That's a lot of things going on. But again, if you kind of look back on 2019 and on 2020, there are things that we do for the community. There are things that we do internally for the city organization. But they're all about making ourselves and our community better.
Right. Absolutely, Mark. That was a great overview of what's to come in 2020, kind of community large. So let's take a moment to kind of focus on downtown, because a lot of people are talking about downtown. There's been so much going on down there. So in 2019, what can you say were the projects that are still underway or were completed in 19. What have we seen down there?
Yeah, so if you've been to the downtown here recently, you know that the west side of the town square is pretty complete. But one of the things that we finished up here in 2019 was that connection from essentially Milwaukee Street Bridge down to the Dodge Street parking area and the bubbler and all of that. We were able to complete the Ice Age Trail cantilevered walkway, so it's over the Rock River, kind of goes around the riverfront center and connects back into the shoreline. So that was a big project, and frankly the river levels, and the speed of the river didn't help us early spring, so it took a little bit longer to bring that in. And then we finished up that parking area behind the IBEW building. I call it the Dodge Street parking area, but it's where you would park and or drop somebody off that was coming down to the west side of the town square. But the west side of the town square looks fantastic, and so I'm really excited about that. I would tell you that in 2019 we started a couple things, but frankly, again, because of weather and the river and high water and speed of the water, they've kind of been slowed down. But we started actually last year, 2018 October, to demolish the Milwaukee Street Bridge, and then over the winter and then this spring we started to build Milwaukee Street Bridge. But that's been a very, very long and painful project. It's a DOT state-sponsored project. But frankly, with water levels the way they've been, it's been hard for the contractor to be able to bring that in on time. It was originally scheduled for completion in June, then it's October, and now it's looking like winter time or even next spring, just based upon the challenges that they've come into. But we started that in 18, we worked on it in 19, and we'll finish it up here in 2020. My hope is that here in the near future we'll at least be able to get one lane open so that we can open up another corridor moving from the east side of the river to the west side. I would tell you that the Blaine Gilbertson Family Heritage Bridge, which previously we called the pedestrian bridge, has been started in 2019. Again, water levels, kind of made an impact there, but they've got all of the piers in right now, so the supporting piers. They've got the abutments on the west side's done. I think they've got to work on the east side, but hopefully, if the river levels drop a little bit here in the next month or so, they'll be able to lay the actual deck of that bridge. And again, the pedestrian bridge is the bridge that connects the east and the west side of the river, but it's essentially split between Milwaukee Street in the north and Court Street in the south. But it connects that east and west side of the town square. And then, I would tell you that from a private perspective, the other big thing that happened at our downtown is that the Cobblestone Hotel opened up. I think they did a soft opening in August and a formal opening in September. But a great new addition to our downtown, 50 plus rooms. They've got a nice restaurant there. It's right on the river. And so, a great place for people that are coming to the downtown, maybe business community, to utilize that. But initial reports are they're getting lots of good business, and I hear that the restaurant is successful also. So some nice things happening in the downtown during 2019.
So when you think downtown, you think of the Arise plan. So going into 2020, what can we see for Arise development? Yeah,
so like I said, first and foremost, we've got, completion of the Milwaukee Street Bridge. Second, we've got completion of the Blaine Gilbertson Family Heritage Bridge. Those two things will get done earlier, and then really we're going to move to that east side of the town square, so that land between Water Street and the river back behind Old Town Mall, that is going to be redone, and it will be as nice, if not nicer, than the west side and our Festival Street. And kind of the intent, if you think about the amenities that will be over there, so you'll have a walkway along the river, so you'll be able to walk right out to the river's edge, and then you'll have the Cope Ryan Pavilion, so a smaller version of the Cullen Pavilion, which is on the west side, will be over on the east side, but a nice covered pavilion for a small band or some kind of event. There'll be a raised kind of like like a wooden deck. I don't think it's actually made out of wood. I think it's the composite material, but a nice wooden deck. There'll be some lounge chairs. There'll be a fire pit. The donor wall will be over there. And then Water Street will actually be built very similarly to the Festival Street, River Street on the west side, so that, kind of in the future, what I envision is that you can have, something like a farmer's market on the east side, a farmer's market on the west side, and then, the community just, either transits the pedestrian bridge back and forth, or you just do a big loop around the town square. And so that will be nice. And then, I think once the Festival Street kind of version east, if you will, on Water Street is set up, that will really provide that central core community gathering place. And, we took a test earlier this year about, do you have a strong community? And one of the tests was, if an emergency happened, where would people gather? And some of the folks in town suggested, we think people would gather at Lower Courthouse Park. Others said, people might gather at City Hall. And, hopefully with the creation of a town square, that's where people would gather, because it becomes not only your location for activities, but it also becomes your gathering point for information and conversation.
Yep, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Lots of stuff coming up. I'm
Yep.
so excited to see what goes on in 2020. And you've covered a lot of these projects, and they're all city-centric, but of course you know that a lot of our projects couldn't be completed without our very important partnerships. So let's talk a little bit about those partnerships that we have in the city.
Yeah, sure. So I would tell you that, as you know, the city can't do it alone. And so partnering with organizations, partnering with volunteer groups, partnering with what I call these friends groups, here in our community, that's what makes Janesville tick. It's an extremely giving community. This is my take, but an extremely giving community. People will give, money certainly, but more importantly, they'll give of themselves. They'll give time, sometimes, supplies or services in kind, but it's an extremely giving community, and those partnerships are so important to allow the city to do our core functions, and then kind of the cherry on top of the sundae is all these amazing things that our community partners can help us achieve. A great example is go to Riverside Park. I think the Friends of Riverside have put in time over $100,000 of donated dollars into that park. And so, if it was a municipal park, it would be nice. Sure. But it's spectacular because of that Friends group. And so I think it's nice that we have groups like that are working in our park system around the community. But we also have folks, think about it, all of our boards, commissions, committees, from a city government perspective, are all volunteer positions. I think about the Common Council. Those are a lot of hard work hours over the course of a month, and they're all volunteers. They're not getting paid. And then I think about all of the, if you will, the service organizations that we partner with around the community. Groups like Optimist Club, the Rotarians, Kiwanis, et cetera, our veteran service organizations, the Janesville Patriotic Society, the VFW, American Legion, et cetera. All of these organizations are working to make Janesville a better place to live, work, and play. And so when we all work together, it's amazing what can be done. And so I'm really excited about it. I would tell you that the other thing that I would highlight is a partnership with a series of groups, but we call it the Arise Now partnership, and that is kind of looking back on our downtown. That downtown project, when we first started looking at what this was going to look like, we were like, yeah, that's about $12+ million to do this, and that's a lot of taxpayer dollars. And the private community stepped up and said, you know what? Let's make this a private partner or a private-public partnership, and we can raise some money and put it towards these improvements in the town square. And so to date, they've raised about $6 million to improve our town square, and then some of that money going to JPAC for some improvements in the Janesville Performing Arts Center. And so, when I think about the community stepping up to see something happen, what's happening in our downtown with Arise Now is really a great example of that.
Absolutely. So we talked a little bit about downtown. Let's go ahead and move south to the south side of Janesville. And if anyone's taking the time to take a drive down there, totally different landscape. Lots of industrial activity going on the south side. So what's been new in 2019?
Yeah, I would tell you that, I think the biggest change in the landscape, if you will, in 2019 on the south side has been the GM plant has finally been demolished. And so there isn't any vertical structure remaining on the GM plant site. And so, that's huge for the south side, because until we've got some resolution on the south side or on that GM plant, lots of things are kind of, they're in this state of flux on the south side. People just don't know. And so getting that moving forward is huge. And so just, for the listening audience, 2015, the plant was officially closed. 2017, General Motors sold the plant to Commercial Development Company Incorporated. They came in April of 2018 and started to do the demo work, and it took them about 15 months. They've taken down all of the structures on the site. And so now what they're working on is they're working on the environmental cleanup plan, if you will. So they expect to have that plan locked in here by the end of 2020, and then end of 2019, but then actually do the work in 2020, so that by the end of 2020 they get a closure letter from the DNR, and so and then they can start marketing it and getting it redeveloped. I know that they've had people that have been interested in the plant and doing things with the plant, but they got to get that closure letter for the main plant site. But it's exciting. They now call it Centennial Industrial Park, and so the future is bright. But that's kind of the linchpin, if you will, on things on the south side. We really need to see that former General Motors plant transition and transform and evolve and become whatever that new Centennial Industrial Park looks like. But when I go to the south side of town, one of the things that amazes me is that even though that is something we're waiting to see develop, it's not hampering other industrial users and tenants to come in and either build their own buildings, or someone builds a spec building, someone else occupies it. And so I think about, kind of down on the corner of Beloit Avenue and State Highway 11, lots of activity down there. Recently, the former John Deere plant or John Deere facility was sold, cleaned up, remarketed. Generac moved their distribution operations into there. Right next door to that, what used to be the parking area, a company called Zilber came in and built a 300,000 square foot spec building. I don't know whether they have a tenant yet for that facility, but it's a huge, massive addition to our south side. If you go across the street, Nature Pack is building a pet food manufacturing facility where they will produce pet food, and I hear it's kind of high-end pet food, but very interesting there. We've already got the Dollar General plant. There's conversations going on about the land that's to the west of that Nature Pack facility. And then I think you've got to take note of the Shine facility. Earlier this spring, they broke ground on that facility. They've been moving dirt, and I saw some pictures of some of the concrete work that's now started to go into the ground for that Shine production facility. And so, when I think about the south side, yes, we all focus on Centennial Industrial Park and that former GM plant, but there's a lot of other activity going on. And so, I think about where the south side will be in the next 3 to 5 years, and frankly, unless something tanks nationally from an economy standpoint, it's very, very exciting to think about what that south side is going to look like, because you've got all this industrial capacity growing and evolving on the south side, which in turn will bring residential activity and then commercial retail activity. And so, it all kind of works together, but you got to have the jobs, got to have the people, and the rest of it will come.
So, Mark, you've already mentioned a little bit about the Monterey area. You talked a little bit about Anglers Park, which was new in 2019, and the removal of the Monterey Dam. So kind of an all-encompassing part of that is the Monterey Area River Restoration Project. Let's talk about what's happening with that project.
Yeah, so we call that project the MAR, and as you said, the Monterey Area River Restoration Project. But in 2018, in the summer, we removed the Monterey Dam. An emotional event for a lot of folks, but frankly, it was going to be more expensive to try and maintain it into the future than simply to remove it and restore the area and return it to its natural state, which is what we're working on. And so this year, frankly, we focused on the area between the Monterey Rock and downstream, which, as I mentioned, became Anglers Park. I think some of the nice attributes of that, are we have some fishing platforms that or stairs that take you down to the river and help you get closer to the water's edge. We had a donation of an ADA handicapped accessible fishing platform so that you can park there and move along the trail quite easily to a fishing platform and then roll out onto a fishing platform right over the river. And so it's a perfect kind of addition to that park. And then, obviously just some natural beauty. If you kind of stand on the Centerway or the Center Avenue Bridge and you look west, southwest, it's very picturesque. And so it's kind of achieved that, back to nature look. We really like what it's turned into. But the other thing that we've done is that kind of upriver, so upriver from the Monterey Rock, we've done some river wall restoration. There used to be concrete slabs that weren't very natural along the river side, the north side of the river. And so we've pulled all of that out and regraded and put some natural grasses in there, so that will return to a natural look as opposed to something a little bit more urban, if you will. And so that was something. And then kind of the last thing that we've got to do, oh, by the way, we've put in some fish cribs and boulders and things that will, some log cribs, things that will encourage fish habitat and good fishing opportunities, because that's really what we'd like to see happen there. And frankly, I've heard that the fish are already migrating up the river, and it's a positive kind of back to nature, if you will. But what we've got to work on is, and this has been a challenge, the old Monterey Lagoon is, again, it's got that concrete or had that concrete kind of river wall. We've ripped all of that out. If the water gets down here this fall, we'll still be able to get out there and restore that before winter sets in. And then we've got to do some grading, some regrading on the Monterey Bay. The Monterey Bay, the natural vegetation, is going to remain. It's going to be a stormwater pond. There are, 5 to 7 stormwater inlets that flow into that former Monterey Bay from the Fourth Ward. That's where their stormwater goes. So it's a stormwater pond collection area. There is known contamination in the soil there. It's nothing to be alarmed about. We've gotten permission from the DNR to cover it with 6 inches of soil, which we will do in accordance with the permit that they've given us to do this work. But really, kind of the vision is, how do we encourage waterfowl to enjoy and to live in and occupy this stormwater collection area. And so, we've talked about, some birdhouses out in the stormwater collection area. We've talked about perhaps some observation platforms that get you out into the stormwater area, collection area. But bottom line is we've got to do some regrading so it collects properly and holds the water. We've got to get that 6 inches of topsoil on top of the contaminated or possibly contaminated, depending upon where you're at, soil in the stormwater area. And then we've got to put some natural plantings in there that will help retain the soil, help filter the water, and then, oh, by the way, help encourage some, hopefully some waterfowl. And if you remember this past spring, summer, we had, 300 plus pelicans that showed up out of nowhere, and that's the kind of activity that we'd like to see down there. So the MAR project is moving forward. It's taken a little bit longer than we thought, but, that's just what happens when Mother Nature gets involved, right? And so, it's got I would say probably finish that up sometime next summer and then give it a year or two to kind of get itself reestablished.
Sure. Looking forward to seeing how
Yep.
that turns out. Certainly, people have heard bits and pieces about a potential indoor sports complex that could come to Janesville. What are some of the details about that project?
Yep. So, as you know, the current ice arena, frankly, it's a 40-year-old facility. We're, kind of like that Monterey Dam, putting a lot of money into it. It becomes more and more expensive the longer you try and put the Band-Aid on it. Same sort of deal. We've put a lot of money into it recently, and the foreseeable future, we're going to have to keep doing the same thing. So we started in 2016, taking a look at, what do we want to do if we want to, replace that ice arena, that current ice arena. And so the discussions kind of ensued that, one, we need a new ice arena proper, something that is to the standards of the NAHL, the North American Hockey League, of which the Jets are a team member. We also, though, have a lot of other user groups that, frankly, one ice sheet doesn't necessarily cut the mustard. And so, can you have another ice arena or another ice sheet at least in the facility? And the answer is yes. And what we've come up with is a removable ice sheet, so that sometimes you have court surface, sometimes you have turf surface, but during the season you can certainly have the ice sheet in there. And so a second ice sheet. And then as we looked at this, we said if we're going to have possible court and turf and ice on that second surface, when you want to do tournaments and things like that, should you have another court or turf surface? And the answer is yes. And so what we've come up with is an indoor sports complex, not just an ice arena, but an indoor sports complex with 3 separate surfaces. So the NAHL standard ice arena. You've got the second surface, which is a switch between ice, court, and turf. And then that third surface, which no ice component to it, but simply court and or turf. And so, we've identified that that's the right fix, if you will, for the ice arena, but also provides for some economic development opportunity for the community. And then we've spent this year really looking at, now that we know that this is what we want, where do we put this? And we held essentially a competitive process where landowners could offer up their sites for the placement of this this indoor sports complex. Just recently the council approved the Janesville Mall as that preferred location. So the city staff, we now have the opportunity to negotiate with the mall on what this might look like, and we'll begin those discussions here in the near future. But if everything goes according to plan, we would be able to cut a ribbon sometime in the fall of 2022, so about 3 years from now. This is a public-private partnership again, so at least half of it, coming from public resources, public funding, and then, potentially up to half coming from the private sector. And we'll see how the private sector does with their fundraising efforts. But really, at the mall, preferably. If not at the mall, it could go out to the youth sports complex as an alternate location. But I think right now the conversation has been a very, very positive one. The community seems to have really gotten behind this idea. They're excited about it. They're excited about it being at the mall. And so now we need the private side to, bring forward some of those private dollars so that this can, again, be a public-private partnership, because it's an expensive undertaking. We're talking, $30 million or so, and that's a lot of money. Whether it's public funding, private funding, or a combination of both, that's a lot of money. So we still got a lot of work to do, but hopefully by the end of February, we can, go to the council and say, the private side can bring forward this much money. We think the public side, we can afford to do this much money. The mall has agreed to, the terms, and we're all in agreement, and we'd like to move to design. So that's kind of where we're at, but it's an exciting project.
Yes, it is. So I'm going to jump all the way back to 2018 for a moment here. And back in 2018, we held a housing summit, brought a lot of people together and had a very important conversation about housing in the community, and that has taken us into 2019. So What can you say are some of the good results that we've had because of those discussions?
Well, I would tell you 2019 has certainly been the year of housing for Janesville. I mean, it's kind of been our seminal achievement for the community, kind of looking back on it at this point. But, you know, to your point, 2018 we held a housing summit of, you know, what do we need to do as a community to stimulate housing development and growth in the community? Because, as I said earlier, you know, the city's booming economically. I mean, $1 billion in growth over the last 4 years. We've got, you know, lots of new companies that have come to Janesville, a lot of current companies that have grown or expanded, and so people are moving to Janesville faster than the housing industry has kept up. So in 2018, we realized, wow, we are in a seller's market because there's a housing shortage. Our rental properties are, you know, maxed out, filled. There's less than 1% vacancy rate. And so what can we do to encourage or stimulate housing development? And so we did that housing summit. We kind of followed up late fall, and we asked the council to authorize tax incentive financing, TIF, to stimulate or encourage multifamily home development, so apartment complexes. And, you know, I'm very, very pleased to say that we have, you know, 2 projects that have now been approved by the council, and one that, you know, hopefully will be approved here in December, maybe early January, but, you know, here within the next couple months. And so I would share with you that, you know, we have a company by the name of Hovde that is building a project called The Glade, and that's out on Racine Street on the south side, right next to the interstate. It's 260 high-end apartments, and their owner, the Hovde owner, said, you know, that there's really nothing that's, you know, at this level or this quality level in Janesville currently, and so it will provide kind of a new menu choice, if you will, for apartments. And so we're really excited about the high end. Then we had, you know, another company, Horizon, that came in, and they wanted to do some infill work, and so they purchased land over on the old youth baseball fields in between Woodman Road, Blackbridge, and Mayfair. But you know, they're building a complex of market rate apartments, so kind of that mid-level, 115 of them. So you take 260 plus 115, you know, you're at 375 new apartments in the community. And then one we're working in the downtown right now with a developer called Commonwealth, and their project is going to be called River Flats. But it's right downtown, in between Center and Laurel and Jackson and Franklin, right next to the police department, but a total of 91 affordable housing units. And so, you know, that's, like I said, bring that to the council here into the year or so. And so if you think about it, you know, you take 91 plus those 375, you know, that's a whole lot of apartments to kind of, you know, meet the need in the community. And we've really hit the 3 touch points. So you've hit, you know, kind of a higher level, you know, as far as cost, kind of a mid-level as far as cost, and then an affordable level as far as cost. And so we've really kind of hit all 3 regions, if you will, from an economic standpoint. And so I'm excited about that. And then, you know, frankly, we've got some single-family home development. There's been a lot of individual homes, custom homes, infill, not a lot of developments, but we're starting to see an uptick of some plats, if you will, you know, 10 or more homes being built as part of a planned neighborhood. And so I just saw a flyer the other day of one going in potentially behind the Sam's Club. We've got some more activity out on the northeast side of town, and so you know, it's an exciting time to be here. But again, from a city perspective, 2019 has really been, you know, the year of housing and home development. And, you know, frankly, we hope that more comes because, you know, frankly, Janesville is growing, you know, people, jobs, and we need places for them to live.
Well, Marc, we have covered so much information here today, and I appreciate, you know, the ability to talk to you about so many different parts of the community and everything the city has done in 2019, and then where we're going to head into 2020. So I appreciate that. Is there anything else that we haven't covered? Anything else you'd like to talk about?
I think we've talked about an awful lot today, but I would tell you that I would just reiterate to the community that the city of Janesville, so the local government is we want to be transparent, we want to be responsive, we want to be accessible, and so if you have a question, a comment, an idea, a concern, keeping it to yourself isn't helping us. You gotta contact us. So call us, email us, come see us, come to a council meeting, let somebody know. But you gotta communicate. And we think we're going to be receptive. We want to be receptive, but you got to let us know what the issues are. So please stay engaged with local government would be my message.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again, Marc, so much for joining me here today in the studio. We really appreciate you taking the time to give our viewers all this great insight. And thank you, viewers at home, for tuning in. Next month, we'll be talking with Marc again, who will be joined by Finance Director Max Gagan. They'll be talking about the City of Janesville's 2020 budget and legislative opportunities for the new year. In addition to tuning into this program on a monthly basis, stay connected to the City of Janesville by following us on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. You can also sign up to receive emails with our press releases and other important information. And you can subscribe to get emergency alerts from the Janesville Police Department on Nixle. For Park Place Views and the City of Janesville, I'm Molly Nolte. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next month.